All right, welcome everybody. We're here this morning to discuss what VMware and Stratodesk have partnered to do with retail point of sale modernization and virtualization of the retail store. I'm Corey Kitchens. I'm the Director of Global Retail Architecture here at VMware. I'm customer advocate, subject matter expert, and here just to be a voice of the customer and bring back what's happening in retail to VMware and help align our solutions and make sure that we're meeting the needs of our retailers. Rich?
Hey, good morning. My name is Rich Severson. I'm the VP of Global Solutions Engineering at Stratodesk, and I've worked alongside the team at VMware to put together this virtual retail point of sale solution, as well as other solutions, obviously, in the end user computing space and virtualization space over the past years. So that's a little bit about me. So,
Okay.
Corey, looking forward to this.
Absolutely. We've done some exciting things together. VMware and Stratodesk partnership's been fantastic. We've been able to solve some unique problems and challenges in the retail store. And Rich, if you want to go ahead and pop into the slides, we can talk just a little bit about the why and what's happened in retail. Retailers are being faced with a lot of challenges with technology. There's more and more that's being pushed into the store. The technology stack continues to grow and change and evolve. And boy, a couple years ago we stood at NRF and we laid down the fact that what's happened in the previous decade, with the advent of 3G and 5G and all the things that are happening in the world of technology are changing, and what's being pushed forward is massive, and that just accelerated the past 2 years. Challenges are always going to be changing, right, Rich?
Oh yeah, it's never ending, right? I mean, if you look at it from the retail perspective, it's all about what the customers see, right? But then from the IT perspective of the organization, how do you keep that current, but yet deal with all the changes in infrastructure, bringing in the cloud services, differences in endpoints, a lot of organizations moving to kiosks, all those kinds of things, right?
Right. And the security challenges are also immense. Through the pandemic time, the acceleration of ransomware and the challenges of meeting IT security have also been a huge challenge for our retail customers. And can you tell us a little bit about what Stratodesk has done there?
Yeah, so a little bit about Stratodesk real quick, because sorry, Corey, I think almost everybody knows about VMware. Stratodesk is a little bit less of a brand recognition, but so at Stratodesk, what we do is we actually build a high-performance secure Linux operating system that we use to put on endpoints. And those endpoints could be point of sale devices, they could be PCs, they could be laptops. We repurpose devices, I guess, if you will, right? And then those endpoints then become user devices for either point of sale type devices, VDI type devices, client access devices to your cloud workspaces, those kinds of things. But it gives us the ability to be able to take our OS and put it on just about any endpoint hardware, and then be able to manage that across the enterprise. And one of our key alliances is obviously with VMware, and then using our OS on those devices, we can then connect to the Horizon infrastructure in the back end and make it easier to deploy current operating systems, line of business applications, those kinds of things, much easier, much quicker.
So, one of the things that we have found with our retail customers is that, these technologies, whether it's a loss prevention solution, obviously camera technologies, anything really that interacts with a customer, it needs to, number one, be resilient. It has to work. It has to work 100% of the time. And number two, it has to work well. There can't be a long path back to that solution. So what we're doing is we're bringing a slice of the data center or the cloud back closer to the store. So we're providing, compute power at the retail endpoint, at the store itself. So what that does is it reduces latency. So the time from the point that either a customer or a store associate initiates an interaction with the device to the time that there's a response from, the service that they're accessing, is minimized. But it also provides resilience back to the store level. And that's pretty important. One of the things that we found here at VMware, is that, our customers are investing heavily in edge compute. They're wanting to provide those services, virtualization and containerization at the store level. But what else do you do? It's great. We've adopted loss prevention, but we've made that investment. So what else can we do to add to that ROI story to, increase the return on investment, and make the most of what we've got at the store level? And the next thing that really made sense was to virtualize the point of sale. All of our retail customers have, point of sale, whether it's an assisted checkout, self-service checkout, SCO, or a kiosk. There are point of sale devices in the store itself. So through our partnership with Stratodesk, we've been able to do that. We've been able to virtualize those lanes and reconnect all of the various peripherals that our customers use. And Rich, if you could flip to that next slide, we can talk a little bit about the scale of retail. Retail is massive, and this is a big problem for managing, individual devices, dozens or more devices at each store, hundreds or thousands of stores all over a widespread geography. So bringing all of that back together and allowing the centrally, managed solution and to manage all of those devices, through, a connected portal. And, Rich, you can speak a little bit about your control plane and, how that allows, a retailer to, address all of those individual endpoints, through a way that makes sense.
Yeah, and what we'll do real quick is I'll talk about, the ease of deployment, right? And then, to your point, the ease of maintenance and support in the long run, because all of those become part of the overall story of how to do this and do it efficiently as well as cost effectively, right? So the nice thing about ROS is it only requires a minimum of 4 gigs of RAM, 4 gigs of flash. And then you can use just about any deployment mechanism that you have available, whether it be, an SCCM, those kinds of things, or whether it's Pixie, or even, SneakerNet using a USB. There's multiple ways to deploy Stratodesk OS. Once Stratodesk OS is out there on those devices, we can use, multiples of automation mechanisms to have the devices automatically report into our control plane called No Touch Center, and then provision the connections, have them automatically connect into Horizon to get their sessions, and literally, so the devices boot up basically and go right to the line of business point of sale applications seamlessly. And then, of course, you have the ability to manage those devices across the enterprise, whether it be at the store level, whether it be at the line of business, right? Because we could talk about the sale for the checkout lanes. There's always the kiosks. There's digital signs, and multiples of different stores. You have different departments, say, maybe pharmaceutical, maybe garden, those kinds of things. So you may have devices grouped by that. And then once you get the OS out on those devices, get the devices automatically enrolled and automatically configured and those kinds of things, then it comes about the supportability, right? How do you support those machines? And one of the things that we found historically is, with retail today, a lot of places have, let's call it regional support engineers, where if something happens at a store, they find that it's easier just to deploy a technician to go out and replace the entire hardware and get the line back up. Which, it's okay, but that's a human cost. It's, drive time. It's the cost of getting the individual out there, pulling the hardware back, all of those kinds of, there's a lot of cost in that. Whereas if, you have something like No Touch and you can reach into those devices and repair, reconfigure, bring those devices back up online quickly without having to deploy somebody, that's huge. And that's a big cost savings. So, there's a whole combination of the things that Stratodesk brings to this from the pure endpoint perspective of, ease of deployment and supportability.
And one of the things that, I've seen is that, Stratodesk will run on almost anything, so what we've essentially done here is we've decoupled the hardware requirement from the software requirement. So now, whether you're needing to run Windows 10, Windows 11, and run it on any device. So, in my home lab, for example, I've got a Windows 10 point of sale solution that would typically be used in a hospitality center, like a restaurant, running Windows 10 on an Intel endpoint, and I've got the same Windows image also being accessible on a Raspberry Pi. And I know that there's also been some work being done, for some of the, handheld devices like Zebra TC52, et cetera, that, Stratodesk can get to those devices where maybe, typically our retailers haven't been able to access their point of sale.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, as you mentioned, right, the breadth of devices that we can support 32-bit devices, we can support 64-bit devices. We had one joint customer, right, that had 32-bit hardware from 10, 12 years ago, and they wanted to modernize their line of business. But in order to do that, they have found that they also had to modernize their lanes. And they found that the cost of modernizing the line of business and the cost of modernizing the lanes was too exorbitant. So they wanted to find a way where there was a balance where they could do both. And what they found is by adjusting their budget to modernize the infrastructure and the line of business applications, and using Stratodesk at the endpoints and repurposing those endpoints, provided a tremendous cost savings, which has allowed them to be able to financially make the project viable. Because there's a lot of things that go into certainly the hardware when it comes to point of sale devices, right? As you mentioned, there's all the peripheral devices. If you need to modernize your lanes or your endpoints for the point of sale, you're looking at obviously potentially the hardware cost for just the machines itself. You're looking at the peripheral devices. Do you need to go from legacy serial devices, say, to USB devices? And then all the support and documentation that goes around those changes. One of the other hidden costs that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to retail with point of sale is the actual furniture. I mean, a lot of times,
Absolutely, yeah.
A lot of times these stores, the furniture, meaning what you see as a customer, is actually built around the hardware at the lane. And if you change the hardware at the lane, now you've got to change the furniture. It becomes a huge, ridiculous cost.
Absolutely. And let's go ahead and pop to that next slide. And
Sure.
you're 100% correct. POS deployments are complicated, and putting people in stores and truck rolls, et cetera. The less that has to happen, the better. And one of the things that we've also found is there's a huge environmental cost to all of this. Whether it's the idea of just ripping out hardware that's functional and throwing it away, that hardware has value, both, economically, obviously, there's been money invested in it, but also environmentally, there's a lot of plastic, there's, metal, there's glass, there's everything else involved to produce that. And pulling that hardware out and throwing it away and putting it in a landfill, if it lasts 30% more, time, that's 30% less stuff that you throw away. Also, as our customers move forward, the conversation shifts away from, how much processor power do I need? How much memory capacity do I need? And how much, storage do I need on that device? To just a simple conversation of, does it have the correct ports to plug in my peripherals? And what size screen do I want? So we give you the ability to, rethink the POS lane, to slim down that hardware stack and to move to a true thin client, because now we've shifted everything to the edge. So what you're seeing in this slide is a depiction of, we'll virtualize just about any device. So whether it's that POS lane, handheld, kiosk, replace the operating system that typically would run there with a lightweight Linux thin client, in this case Stratodesk, shift that Windows workload over to an edge server that's on premise to give you the reliability that you need as a retailer, and reconnect everything utilizing VMware's Horizon Direct Connect software. Then we manage it utilizing Workspace ONE. This gives you all the benefits that you would have in your data center with all the server technology, but we're extending those use cases out to the retail front of house. So now you're software defined. You have the ability to leverage orchestration. You have the ability to, keep everything common and work from a single software image. And as you move forward into the future, if you're acquiring a new brand, if you're, deploying to a new store, you can pre-provision everything and put a store in a box. So there's a lot of different benefits that we have here. And this allows retailers to take advantage of the cloud, of virtualization, just like they do in the back of house, but to do it in the front of house.
Well, and one of the things too, Corey, we haven't talked about it. It's important to understand too, the advantage of doing this as a solution is the fact that you can virtualize the line of business application. So you get the advantage, like you said, putting that on the VMware infrastructure. It gives you obviously the efficiency, the resiliency, right? Having it virtualized. It's going to give you the performance of the back end, because now if you need to resize something, whether you need to resize the database or you need to resize the virtual machines, that's all virtualized. You can now do that on the fly with the VMware infrastructure. And key to we found is that with Stratodesk OS on the endpoints, you're actually modernizing the OS. So you may be using that legacy hardware that's already out there, but because it's a more modern OS, you're still going to end up with a better performance factor. I mean, because obviously, transactions per second becomes important when you get into the retail space, right? So the last thing you want to do is slow down the people there that are doing the checkouts.
Absolutely.
So that's important, and so don't be afraid that virtualizing this stuff and using legacy hardware, it may feel like you're adding difficulty and increasing the technology. It actually makes the performance in the environment much faster and easier to scale.
One of the things that we've also seen, and it's hard to believe if you're not a retailer, but it happens, is that nothing is on that endpoint any longer. The operating system, that the point of sale and all of the data is in the back, and it's in a rack, where it's secure. I've actually had retailers have point of sale terminals stolen. Somebody come in, pick one up and walk out the door. And as retailers move to handheld devices, that even becomes a bigger threat. Somebody walk out with a tablet. With this, in this approach, there's no data any longer for someone to get. Those endpoints are essentially dead when they leave the premise. And Rich, one of the terms that we know is a big part of Stratodesk's language that I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about is lockdown. Can you tell us a little bit about what that really means, and what lockdown OS does for our retailers?
Yeah, well, it's actually really important, because when you get into the compliance, PCI and those kinds of things. So what we mean by lockdown is at Stratodesk, we actually build the operating system ourselves. We're not using an off-the-shelf operating system. So it's a high-performance secure Linux operating system. We start from the kernel level, and then we build the operating system to meet our use cases and our demands and our customers' use case and demands. And what that allows us to do is that allows us to remove all the different attack vectors that you would see in a traditional OS. So it minimizes the risk. In fact, actually, we can set it so that the only ports that are open from a technology perspective on your retail point of sale devices are the ports that we use for management and the ports that are used for the line of business application. And typically that's actually the same port, being a secure port. So the attack vector becomes almost zero. There's no user per se on our operating system. So that means that, there's no privilege escalation for malware and those kinds of things. So all those types of attacks and risks are mitigated from that perspective. And one thing, Corey, you were talking just a minute ago that reminds me, and I want to bring this up, is, even modern machines, what we would consider modern machines, are potentially an issue for point of sale. What I mean is there are millions of devices that were sold 2 or 3 years ago with Windows 10 that IT organizations spent, millions of dollars on, that are not going to be Windows 11 compliant. So now they've got these fleets of devices out there that, these are still good machines. To your point, talking about the green.
It's a
environmentalism.
treadmill.
Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, these are i3s, i5s, i7s that are perfectly good machines. They're not going to be Windows 11 compliant, so they're going to have to be replaced or something done with them. And that's a perfect opportunity to put Stratodesk OS on them and then connect to Windows 10, Windows 11 virtualized in the VMware
Or
infrastructure.
12 or whatever comes next. And the truth
Yes.
of the matter is, this is a never-ending cycle. And we're breaking that paradigm with this. We're giving back retailers the ability to make the rational business decisions and to shift away from those spikes of expense that are going to keep happening. This allows them to shift to a more OpEx model rather than a CapEx model that they've traditionally been in. And, regardless of what point of sale, is adopted, there's still going to be an operating system on that endpoint. That operating system is going to have somewhere that it can run and have compatibility with. So this doesn't stop. And I've been in front of retailers, and they'll tell us, we've just adopted Windows 10, so this isn't a concern anymore. And to some extent, yes, that's correct, but it's just kicking the can down the road. And that current version of Windows creates an artificial horizon, is what we've seen.
Yeah, and again, it's all about saving cost on the hardware, saving cost on supportability, saving costs on the deployment, consolidating the environments. I'm not going to go all the way back to the slide at the beginning, but there's a lot of devices that are in point of sale that are typically different platforms because they're different use cases. You got your digital signs that have some digital sign management software that are running typically Linux OS, right? Then you've got, the kiosks that have their own stuff. And then you've got the checkout lanes. And then you've got the security systems. And again, to be able to consolidate and bring those all into one endpoint OS and one line of business or IT infrastructure organization makes the management supportability so much easier.
That's right. So, we've just got a few minutes left here, I think. So, open it up, I guess, to the audience. Is there any questions that anybody would like to ask?
So, let's see, somebody did ask a question. Let's see.
So, one of the things I think that's and Rich, you just touched on that, a question, what else can be virtualized in an environment? And, you touched on, digital menus and, digital signage in stores and, hospitality point of sale, like I said earlier, kitchen displays, if it's in a store, if it runs an operating system, yes, we can virtualize it. Yes, we can shift it back over to the retail edge, in store, and we can, bring that complexity down and thin the stack.
So, and one of the questions, Corey, is how does virtualization help me reduce the amount of time my technicians spend in the stores? And again, when you look at by doing this from a virtualization perspective and the combination of VMware and Stratodesk, now having the application stack, the infrastructure stack being managed from vCenter or from the VMware management plane, you can look at the point of sale applications, the line of business applications from a central data center point of view. And then from the hardware lane perspective, you can do that with the Stratodesk piece and notouch center. So unless there's absolutely a physical hardware failure, there's no need to deploy the truck or send the sneaker net out to the store. We actually did one deployment where the methodology had been to send a team of individuals into the stores to, via USB to update the stores every night. And it would take them, 3, 4, 5 people to do a single store And then you imagine, if you're an organization that got 1,200, 1,600 stores, you've got,
Scale of retail.
yeah, 3 to 4 guys going to a store to do one store a night. How many teams of people you're going to have to do to go across 1,200 stores to get everybody up to the same software level? Whereas now they're able to do the same thing, convert a store from existing environment to Stratodesk with one guy and a USB key overnight. And then you can do all the re-imaging, all the software updates, all those kinds of things, again, from the central data center, from the single, no touch center pane of glass. And then if there's something that needs to be changed on the retail and the line of business application, you've got all that virtualized within VMware. So you have the ability to do those complete image updates from the data center without having to deploy individuals.
So, I think we're just about at the end of our time here. So I want to thank everybody for spending some time with us today. Look forward to seeing each of you at upcoming events, whether it's NRF or VM Explore or anywhere else. And I'd welcome the opportunity to connect and just say, if you're interested in learning more, reach out to your Stratodesk or your VMware team, and we'll speak with you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending some time with me today, Rich.
Oh, no, absolutely, Corey. Thank you. Appreciate it. I love telling this story because of the successes that we've had, and people don't realize how easy it is and what the advantages are. So thank you.
Right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.